You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, it feels like the Reds and the White Sox have a really good shot to link up at this trade deadline. The Reds have a couple of guys that could really help the White Sox playoff push, as they're looking pretty good so far this season. Quite frankly, these two teams, totally different spots from where I expected them to be back in the month of February, but that's baseball, and sometimes you got to call it like it is. And like it is right now, the Reds need to make some deals. So I thought get together with Todd Welter from Locked On White Sox, and we'll discuss this, Todd, because there's definitely a couple of guys that the Reds have that I think should be acquirable for the White Sox. Not necessarily guys that require quite a lot, or if you want to get into like controllable players, how much more that would cost. But I start first with this. I mean, Tyler Stevenson would fill a need that the White Sox have had all season long, and I know that they've dealt with some injuries and ineffectiveness at the catcher position. Ty Steve, on his expiring year of his contract, should be a very perfect fit for the White Sox needs at this deadline.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the targets that the White Sox probably want to go in. I mean, I've been advocating to try to get like a long-term solution, potentially, at least from right-handed, whether it was Hunter Goodman or Shea Langeliers, but obviously Shea's now out for the year. He's not going to be traded, and, you know, I don't think the White Sox are at that point where they're going to give up a lot of their top prospects to get a Hunter Goodman. I don't even think the Rockies are going to be trading him at this point. So then, yeah, you got to pivot to the rental market, and it seems like Tyler Stevenson now is rocketed to the top, especially since the Twins have declared themselves buyers, and the White Sox definitely need catching help, just a short-term catcher, because Kyle Teal is their top guy. I mean, he's the guy that they want to go with in the future. He's just been totally hamstrung by injuries this year, and who knows if he's going to be back in time. And Drew Romo and Edgar Quero have just been an absolute automatic out in the White Sox lineup. So that's why Tyler Stevenson becomes so attractive to the White Sox, in that we just need somebody that can at least not be an automatic out, can provide a hit here and there, and not be just awful defensively, and maybe, challenge well. I mean, because that's the other thing. Romo and Carroll are terrible when it comes to challenging.
Oh, that is something that Tyler Stevenson excels at in droves. In fact, it's only been here recently that he's lost a couple of challenges, because for a while there, it felt like if he was tapping the top of his helmet, it's because the umpire was wrong, because he was going to get that challenge right, at least behind the plate. He doesn't do a lot of challenging while he's at the bat, but from the catcher position, man, he knows the strike zone, and he's really ticked up as far as the bat goes. Like if you look at his season-long stats, 97 OPS plus isn't like that crazy, but the last 28 days in that's 56 plate appearances now for Tyler Stevenson, he's slashing 321, 357, 509, slugging 509. He's looked a lot more like the guy that we had hoped he would be whenever he came up. There were a lot of expectations on him a couple of years ago whenever he first broke into the majors, of like, man, he could be the next big thing at catcher for the Reds, maybe even back cleanup. Never really lived up to that potential, but he's always been one of the better hitting catchers in the league. Defensively, he's gotten so much better at blocking the plate. He's one of the best, pitch blockers, as it were, statistically in the majors. The thing that he struggles with is controlling the run game. That's going to be something that he needs help from his pitchers. He needs quick release guys with, quick motions to the plate, because like the perfect example on the Reds is Chase Burns, our current ace and future ace too, where it's like he's really good, but he's a little bit slow to the plate, and guys just steal at will on him. So that's not going to be something that Ty Steve brings to the table. But something else in this, Todd, I think when it comes to his willingness to stay, like if he feels like the organization is going in the right direction, which it seems like the White Sox are, there might be a chance that they could sign an extension with him, because he was willing to sign with the Reds. The Reds botched that completely, which is why he is so available right now. I mean, reports where he was offered a contract last season and laughed at it, didn't even put a counter back to the team. It was so low. So I think that he's looking for something long-term, so there could be an ability to stay. There's also another interesting guy that the Reds could offer to the White Sox. Again, low cost, definitely not on the same tier as some of the other starting pitchers on the market, but Brady Singer would give you some reliability, at least in the back end of the rotation, get you to the playoffs, I don't know that he starts a playoff game for you, but he really makes you feel good about the depth of your rotation. You could maybe even package those guys together and bring in some serious help at the deadline.
Yeah, Brady Singer has been one of the names that even Gordon Whitmire actually brought up when he was on Chicago radio, because how he still comes on. And that is definitely, I mean, the White Sox, they need to actually add 2 starting pitchers. One that could definitely be a guy that starts in the playoffs, but just another that can get you through the season, because right now they're rolling out Eric Fetty, who can only go now 4 innings, basically. That's all he's been trusted to do. And rookie Noah Schultz, who should be at AAA, really refining his game, because there's a lot of things that are just not working. He's not been like Chase Burns, and that's kind of the frustrating part with Schultz is, you want a guy that can hit the ground running, be dominant, kind of with his, Schultz's pedigree, and he just hasn't gotten there. So they need, obviously, I would think, a guy that can start, and then a guy that can just get you through the season like Brady Singer. And you're right, he's a rent, what's been pointed out, he's a rental. He comes on a cheap deal in terms of what's relatively still owed him. He shouldn't cost you much. I mean, the only way he's going to cost you much is if somehow the Reds decide to package both him and Stevenson together to the White Sox. But to me, it seems like, wouldn't it make sense for the Reds to kind of trade them separately in different assets?
I likely see that happening. There's rumors that the Braves are in on Brady Singer. I think I've also seen him connected to the Yankees and a couple of other teams that are just pitching hungry. And you're right, like separately, it's not going to cost that much. Like, especially when you're looking at the top prospects and other players that are available, none of these guys are going to require that. Like, that's when you start to get into the talks of controllable players. Like, there's Hunter Greene's rumors are still out there that he's available, and there's some teams that are very much interested, deeply interested in acquiring him. I don't know to what level that's gone to. And I still think that there's an element of posturing where those are the teams that are trying to get Tarek Skubal, and they're trying to tell the Tigers, yeah, see, we're okay with going for Hunter Greene. We don't have to give you the prospects. We can give them to the Reds. So I think that there's a little bit of posturing there, and I don't necessarily think Hunter Greene gets traded, but Brady Singer definitely would be available. So thinking about that from the White Sox perspective, obviously Rock Chalosky, not available. What guys are just not happening? Especially, I mean, obviously Stevenson, Singer, that's not going to require like a top 10 guy, but like even looking down at like a William Bergola or somebody like Kai Bush, somebody like that, are those guys probably off the table too? A big thanks to our friends over at Amazon for this limited break. This back to school season, spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy back to school shopping can be when it comes to all of the different supplies, whether you're even talking about clothes and then lunch tech and gear and all the other stuff like calculators and computers. And I mean, 10 other things that you didn't see coming. It all adds up fast, right? I mean, when you're buying supplies, and you find yourself asking how a calculator became one of the most expensive items in the cart. Look, I wasn't expecting math to start costing me so much before school even began. It feels like there's a lesson there, though, and I'm still trying to figure out what it is. Or, maybe the teacher supply list whenever you get it for your child, it seems perfectly reasonable on a item per item basis, but then you add it all together and realize just how much stuff one kid needs for one school year. Remember, with Amazon's low back-to-school prices, just spend less on your kids, because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you haven't spent on them. Shop back to school at Amazon and spend less on your kids.
William Bergoya Jr. has a stress fracture, so he's out for the year, and I kind of think that he might be somewhat untouchable, not only with the injury history, but he is a very good contact Luis Ariz type hitter, and the White Sox do need a couple of complementary contact hitters, and if, say, Tristan Peters continues to turn into a pumpkin, they might want him, although he's an infielder, so they'd have to get him a center field glove to see if he could try to work out. But I think that might be a guy that they would want to take a look at. So he's probably one of the few that I would say is untouchables. And actually anybody in the top 10, the White Sox are trying to hold on to, as the reports are from Bob Nightingale, that they're willing to take on salary back, or at least pay full salary. And that way no team has to send anything back. So they are trying to hold on to at least their top 10 prospects. But Say you want Kai Busch. One of the things is he's coming off of Tommy John surgery, and he still has not made a rehab assignment. But when he is healthy, he had showed a lot of potential at Double-A in 2024, made a few starts, and you kind of saw that, hey, he could be something. I don't know if he'd be something, though, that the Reds would want, but he's definitely a viable type of guy to maybe take a look at it because he has some big league experience. He's got to be he's got to get healthy. Otherwise, I think a lot of the guys, except for George Wolcott, he's another, he's a number 11 per, I think, MLB pipeline, or number 12. He's a guy that they got in the 6th round a couple of years back. Tons of raw power potential, is now just starting to actually make a little bit more contact and not strike out a ton. I think that's a guy that they would want to keep around. And Blake Larson, their other draft pick that they got a couple of years back, he had some Tommy John surgery. He's back. I think that's another guy that they'd be interested in seeing. But otherwise, it's pretty much anybody 11 through 30 that I didn't mention should be available, should be what they're considered, because, again, these prospects are meant to be stars on other people's teams. They're meant to be utility players on other people's teams. Where are you going to play all them? I mean, that's one of the things that I've been fighting, and I know you've been fighting the good fight for a few years. Prospect hugging. It drives me up a wall.
Yeah, that's especially where the White Sox are. The White Sox, honestly, right now, Todd, where the White Sox are reminds me of where the Reds were in 2023. The Reds were in first place at the trade deadline in 2023, needed starting pitching badly. They had Luke Weaver starting back then. Luke Weaver's since been a pretty good bullpen guy, was not a good starting pitcher for the Reds. He was very, very lucky in his win-loss record. That's why we always preach, don't look at the wins and loss record. But they needed starting pitching super, super bad. They held on to all of their prospects. They instead traded for one relief pitcher in Sam Maul, and that was it. Fell out of first place, didn't make the playoffs that year, didn't make the playoffs in 2024, barely made the playoffs last year, and are now going to be well out of the playoff race this year. So you can go back to even just that one trade deadline and say, boy, if things change, how different does this look? And that's where the White Sox definitely need to take advantage of this. I'd be very interested to see how the Reds and White Sox were able to come together on a deal with this. The other part too, and this, I know you had mentioned him already as kind of somebody that's having some struggles with the bat. I think he would be welcome here to at least work through his struggles, at least for the rest of the season, possibly into next year. What is the appetite for getting off of Edgar Quero?
Well, I think they still want to see what he can do in terms of swing-wise, because he showed a lot of potential to hit for contact last year. It was just they wanted him to hit for more power. He wanted to hit for more power. His problem was, and it was in ESPN, they did that write-up. I don't know if you remember seeing it, like when he went to that hit lab. He went too late. He went in like February, and that just totally screwed up his swing, and you could tell he's really now just been pretty much a mess. But the thing is, he's still 23 years old. So to get him for Tyler Stevenson back, I don't think they want to do that, because they view Kyle Teal as a 1A starter in that he's going to start against righties, but he can't hit lefties. He's not, very good at hitting lefties. So they want somebody that can either be a switch hitter or that can hit right-handed, that they can be actually a backup, either a backup catcher or someone that they can put in at the DH, kind of like what I think they were banking on with Edgar Quero. It was just the swing decisions he made. And I think they also just wanted him. He got a little bit heavier than what he should have. So I think they're just wanting him to slim down. I don't think they're ready to abandon him, but they got to get somebody that can at least help them right now. And he's just not helping, except for he did get the walk-off hit on Wednesday night, but there was 5 infielders. You just had to bloop it to the outfield.
Right. I look forward to a possibility of a trade here. Hopefully we'll be crossing over to discuss the trade as we head to the deadline. Locked On Reds and Locked On White Sox will have you covered every step of the way.